Good morning and welcome to Parent-Teen Connection. My name is Rachel Eastop and I am a counselling psychotherapist based in Dunfermline, Scotland. And this is my son, Sam.
Hello.
Who's not saying hello. Who is an actor, singer.
The delay in this is so bad that you're like not even used to me like saying hello. That's so weird.
Oh, okay.
I said hello.
Oh, we're on a delay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so yes, Sam, I was just saying how fabulous you were and are. And Sam is for those of you who aren't regular listeners to our show, basically Parent-Teen Connection is, I'm a parent. Sam is no longer a teen, but he is an adolescent. As well as being a counselling psychotherapist, I am his mum, and our connection is really important to us. We have a great relationship, and I'm delighted and humbled and honoured to have that with my son. But also we want to help other parents and their children, their teenagers, and to understand each other and make good connections. So we meet every Monday. We don't do a massive amount of planning. 2 reasons for that. One is we just don't do a massive amount of planning. And secondly, we want it to be fairly natural and spontaneous and, so you see it as it really is, which is more important, I think, than having something that's quite scripted and staged and trying to be professional. Not that this isn't professional, however. So to start the new year, to kick off the new year, we have decided to introduce a mini-series called Angels and Demons. And so it kind of focuses on the sort of adolescent paradox. Bless you twice there. I see that you sneezed. Adolescent paradox. Okay. So the adolescent brain, as I have mentioned many times before, is a learning machine. Recent research shows that teenagers' IQ can change during adolescence, but the owners of these well-honed machines endanger this valuable power through sleep deprivation, drugs, and drink. Okay, so it's a time of contradiction. You have disappeared. Wow. Okay. That you've disappeared, Sam. Okay, he's gone. An adolescent is physically the healthiest they will ever be in their life. Okay, so their strength, speed, reaction time, reasoning abilities, immune function, resistance to cold, heat, hunger, dehydration, and most types of injury. Yet illness and mortality rates increase by 200% from childhood to late adolescence. So, teenagers, are they angels or demons? Well, sometimes they can be both. And this new mini-series will focus each week on one angel and one demon. A teenager who has shown amazing acts of love, bravery, and kindness, and another who's demonstrated incredible acts of violence and horror.
Yeah, basically,
today,
if you like true crime stuff, then you should listen to this because that's what we're going to talk about. It's very popular. We are obsessed with it as well. So, yeah. You like that kind of
but
stuff.
Also, we've got the added twist. We've got the added twist that we might also delve into a little bit of the sort of psychology around all these sorts of things, and we might chat about, because it's teenagers we're focusing on. It's young people. Okay.
Yeah.
And today we bring you James Pearson and Brian Blackwell. Okay, so shall I go first? James Pearson?
Yeah, if you want. Yeah, do angels first.
Angels, just before we do, I just want to check in with you, Sam. Are you okay? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Got my coffee and my S glass mug, not glass. I'm not awake yet, as you can tell. Wearing my Chemical Romance hoodie, new kind of Christmassy present. So it's all going well. I think my cats are in here somewhere. Oh yeah, he's over there. So got some good company. I'm doing well. Doing very well indeed.
Yeah.
Doing the best that I can be in this situation.
Best that you can be. Good. Well, I'm not doing so well because I made the horrific mistake this morning of getting on the scary step. Do you know what the scary step is?
Is that the scales?
Yeah. And I was horrified.
Oh, you didn't like what you saw.
So now I'm nil by mouth. I'm just drinking water.
Yeah. That's your diet for the next 3 weeks, just water.
Yeah, just horrible. Horrible. Anyway,
Well, I mean,
let's not focus on that.
It's Christmas period. It's all, everyone goes through it. It's that thing where it's like only a week since the Christmas period, or just over a week since like the Christmas period. So like, we're all going to be like, from food and stuff. So you can't blame yourself.
Yeah. No. And but fitness is the name of the game. Fitness and healthy eating, Sam. That's what we're going to be about, mate.
Yeah, that's true.
And I have a wee challenge for us. There's an app called Gym Rat, and I've downloaded it. And basically, I don't know much about it, but I think you can set yourself a walk challenge. So I think there could be a challenge from John O'Groats to Land's End, hundreds and hundreds of miles. You don't physically do it, but you clock up your miles that you walk using another app like Strava or whatever, and you set a sort of goal, a group goal, so we could do it as a family. We could and see who's doing, because Dad does a lot of walking with dog. I try and do a lot of walking. We got a treadmill, folks, Christmas. Or I did, and I'm sharing it.
I can barely
so
run
Sam's using it as well.
It's so small.
Yeah.
It's not for big boys.
Hey, but it's there. It's better than nothing. You could go out in the real world now that the snow's gone.
Yeah, that's true.
However,
but I mean, it's kind of pointless if that's there in the garage, isn't it? Yeah. Also, this wasn't a sponsored segment, even though it sounded like it. It's just dropping your ideas that she actually has.
That's true. Anyway, so on we go to James Person. Now I'm looking over here. Please don't be put off by that. In fact, I could move it in front of me because I have two screens. So I have this story. So what I might do is move it here and I'll read it here. Okay. Are you ready to hear about James?
Ready, yeah.
January the 21st, 2013. A 14-year-old boy from Michigan helped to hide a rape victim in his house while her alleged attacker pounded on the doors, threatening to kill them. James was babysitting his siblings, aged 11 and 2. Suddenly, they heard a banging on the door and a woman screaming, "Let me in, let me in." James opened the door and a panicked woman rushed into the kitchen. She shouted that someone had kidnapped her and was trying to kill her. She told the children they needed to hide. James remembered his dad telling him that in case of emergency, they should hide in the bathroom, the only room in the house with no windows. Everyone climbed into the bath and his 11-year-old sister called 911 while he retrieved, wait for it, the hunting knife he got for Christmas. These are the differences between our country and America. Meanwhile, he called his dad, telling him, "There's a man outside the house and you need to get home as soon as possible." While they waited in the bath, they did not know that the alleged attacker, Eric Ramsey, name and shame, had poured gasoline on the house, lit a match and ran away. The dad found the house on fire, which he put out. It wasn't a blaze, it had just started.
Yeah, it just started a fire,
yeah. Police arrived moments later and assumed a person was the intruder, that's the dad, when they saw him trying to get into the house. He told them that he was the father and that his children were in the house. The children finally opened the door when they spotted police and their dad and met them in the living room, thinking that everyone thought the ordeal was over. My daughter was hysterical, he said, and my son, you could tell he was upset and scared, but he handled it very well. But then the children started talking about a woman with them. Authorities quickly found her. She was injured, but amazingly calm, the dad said. I don't know if she was in shock or relieved that she was safe, he said. Probably a bit of both.
Probably both, yeah.
It was soon determined that the attacker was not on the premises, but that he was on the loose. Person said that he and his family camped out in the living room that night, but no one could sleep knowing that the attacker was on the loose. Ramsey ended up ramming a Michigan State Trooper's car so hard that he disabled it and he could not chase after it, police said. Ramsey backed up as if he was going to ram the car again. At some point during the ordeal, this is brilliant, Ramsey messaged to a post on Facebook, well, folks, I'm about to get shot. Peace. The deputy was able to slither out and ended up firing some shots, which fatally killed Ramsey there at the scene. An investigation revealed that the woman, a senior at Central Michigan University, so what does that mean? She's probably 20, had been on her way to her car when an armed man approached her and forced her into the passenger seat. The gentleman started driving, hardly, took her to a residence in the south part of the Isabella County, brought her inside, taped her hands, bound her, and then ended up sexually assaulting her. He put her back in the car and retrieved 2 gas cans from the garage in the house. At one point, going down the road, he told her that he was going to kill her. So fearing for her life, she ended up jumping out of a moving car. She fractured her arm, but managed to take off running. She spotted the person house and rushed to the door. If James hadn't let her in, there's no doubt in her mind that Ramsey would have ended up killing her. The woman, who has not been identified since she was the victim of a sexual assault, was taken to the hospital for surgery and has since been released. Ramsey, the alleged attacker, was paroled in the summer of that year after spending 5 years in prison for the assault. He also had a violent criminal history. For anything that he did actually do, I'm sorry for the people that he may have hurt, but believe me, that wasn't the way that he was, says his mother. Interesting. Now, I have some observations to make about this story. First of all, what do you make of it, Sam?
Yeah, I thought he was fatally shot. Why did he only serve 5 years in prison?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Oh, hang on. No, I'm sorry. He had been on parole after serving 5 years previously.
Right, okay. I
for
thought that might have been it, but it
crime.
didn't sound like it was talking about a crime from before that. Okay. I think of it as the 14-year-old kid did a very good job. He let someone into his house, which, stranger danger and all that, you kind of are taught not to do that, but he did it, and that was the right call on that account. Lucky it was her and not Ramsey or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good story. I found the story, I thought it was heroic and interesting and inspiring and just a good one, really. So there's loads of other ones, and it was like, I didn't really know which one to pick, but I thought that one was pretty good. So
this is not the problem. My observation of this story is this. Everywhere you look, right, about you. So I Googled this lad's name, and hero of the hour, hailed a hero, heroic boy, hero boy saves girl, right? Hero boy, 14, hero. 20-year-old girl, hero, actually.
Yeah. I was including her in my heroic when I said heroic.
What she did.
The fact that she got away and did all that stuff was very impressive, yeah.
She got away, she ran for help, she was injured. I just want to say, I actually think this is a story of the girl that was the hero, not the boy. Yes, he let her in. Yes, they called for help. you know, he acted amazingly well. You know, he was the man of the house, and this is the thing, isn't it? He was given all the responsibilities. Dad was out, and he was babysitting his two younger siblings, as you've quite rightly said, under pain of death to open the door to anybody when you're, you know, you're babysitting. You don't let anybody in the house. That's a given. Yeah. But he identified, possibly by the look of her, you know, because she was somebody who's literally, I mean, she must have looked a mess. She was still bound. She was hurt. She was screaming. He knew that she was in trouble, and he let her in. And then he took everybody to safety, a room that had been identified by the family as a safe room. But of course, this nutter then starts setting fire to the place. And ironically, if the house did get more on fire, that probably would have been the worst room to have been in, because they couldn't have got out because I had no windows. But he also called his dad. But I just want to say, in that particular story, I think there are two heroes. I don't think we should take anything away from the 14-year-old lad. No, totally. But
also the dad coming in and saving the house from being on fire as well. That's the third hero coming into that story. So there's multiple heroes in that one, or angels in that one, shall we say? That's multiple angels. Strong one. Yeah, and I suppose along our theme of angel, it's, you know, she was in trouble and she needed help, and the angel came in the form of the lad. So yeah, and it's interesting, you know, 14-year-old boy. First of all, you know, well done him for agreeing to babysit, because you might have got a different story from another 14-year-old. You know what I mean? He might have been. Now, another thing, an interesting thing, and I think this is another valid point, is that when you've got your headphones on and you're playing your computer, your Xbox or whatever it is that you're playing, you can't hear a huge amount else that's going on in the house. So, for example, if he was another 14-year-old who was playing on his Xbox, supposed to be looking after his younger siblings, the girl's panicking and banging the door down, and he's like that because he can't hear anything. Right? I'm sure that the younger siblings would have made him aware of the banging and stuff if that was the case.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, if I'm in the house by myself and I'm not on with my pals, I'll probably like play the sound at the telly without my headphones on, just because it's like, you know, decent sound or whatever. So I don't know. I might have, if it was me and you weren't there, I might have heard it because I wouldn't have had headphones or whatever on. But it just depends. But no, like what I think of that story is like, who? I mean, you know, each to their own and all that. But who leaves a 14-year-old to like look after the house and babysit? I understand that you might not be able to afford a babysitter and all that stuff, but a 14-year-old, like, that's quite young. Like me in the house by myself at 14, I don't think I ever did that at all.
You didn't have any siblings.
I know, but like I was never like, if you ever like needed to go and leave me alone, it was like I was maybe 15 or 16 at the time, never not 14.
Well, I think it's quite young. 14. The law is that there is no law about age. Yeah, so I think, you know, Scottish law, UK law is whatever age a parent deems the child to be responsible enough.
Yeah. And obviously he was responsible enough, but like 14 just seems young to me. That's all. Which is, I guess, why the story is impressive, because he's only 14 at the time, you know, when he was doing all that stuff. So.
Yeah. He made a good decision. He took good action. Also, the 11-year-old girl who called the police, she was able to be calm enough. Yes, she was hysterical once her dad got back, but actually they all rallied in that moment for her. Okay, good story. Like it. And we, you know, we want to say these things to you know, redeem people's belief in teenagers and young people, that they're not all self-centered and they can do quite amazing things. So now we have our demon. So,
this one's quite nice. I mean, I don't even understand, like, there's a lot of psychological stuff to this guy. We'll get into that, but I'll read the story first. So I came across this site because I literally just typed in like teens who had murdered or something like that, right? And it came up with this newspaper kind of like page website thing, and had this bird symbol that was like, I recognize that bird symbol. And there's a huge Liverpool fan. I was like, that's a Liverpool badge, that, isn't it? And then along the tops it was like LFC, Liverpool FC. I was like, oh, it's like a Liverpool thing. But it was like, oh, teens who had killed in Merseyside, like in Liverpool area. So this is all just Liverpool, right? And I don't want to give like Liverpool a bad name or anything. No. And it has got a kind of rep for being a bit of a hard kind of place at times and stuff like that. But there's also lovely people in Liverpool. So I want to stress all that before I start reading this, because I don't want to try and give it a bad rep. These are just the worst examples. I'm sure you can find the same in Glasgow, London, all that kind of stuff. This is just interesting to me because I'm a Liverpool fan, and they're pretty freaking bad. Anyway, this one is about Brian Blackwell, who was 18 at the time. And he looks, if you can see it like that. So he's not he's a hard man. Looking nasty piece of work. Anyway. Teenager Blackwell murdered his parents in a frenzied knife and hammer attack. The 18-year-old Liverpool college student beat and stabbed mum and dad Jackie and Brian to death, striking his father 30 times and his mother 20 times with a kitchen knife and a hammer. For 6 weeks, their bodies lay undiscovered. 6 weeks, right? At their home, where their killer's son jetted around the world at their expense, and then partied in Liverpool after getting top grades in his A-levels. I want to just read that paragraph again, right? Because that paragraph blows my mind, right? For 6 weeks, their bodies lay undiscovered at their home, where their killer's son jetted around the world at their expense, and then partied in Liverpool after getting top grades in his A-levels. So he killed his parents, took their credit cards, and then took his girlfriend on this £30,000 spending trip, right? And then also got really good results in his A-levels and his exams. So that was happening at the same time, right? He even returned to their home, walking past his parents' bodies to collect paperwork so he could sign up for a series of loans and credit cards in their names. So he was also like using their names when they were dead to like get even more money, which is just ridiculous. After concerns from neighbours, police forced their way into the Blackwell's home and made the grim discovery. Can you imagine being that poor police officer that had to witness that after 6 weeks? Like, that's your job. Like, you didn't sign up for that. That's not fair. Brian was arrested soon after at his girlfriend Amal Saba's home in Liverpool when neighbours informed police they had seen him coming and going from the house. So the police walk in and go, these bodies have been here for at least a few weeks, right? Because you just know that. And then the neighbours go, oh, but I just saw Brian walking in there yesterday and then out again. So, like, obviously he knows, do you know what I mean? He denied the killing, but police found a sports bag at his girlfriend's house containing parts of the hammer and knife. He then admitted carrying out the attack during an argument. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2005 after pleading guilty to 2 charges of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Now, I don't really know what that means. I think it maybe means that he's too young or not in control of himself. The last bit of this says he was found to be suffering from a narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. Now, you seem to have more on what NPD actually is, because I don't really know what it is. I was going to Google it, but I thought you might just know what it is anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Well, NPD stands for Narcissistic Personality
Disorder, yeah, which I just read.
Yeah. In criminal law, diminished responsibility is the potential defence by excuse by which defendants argue that although they broke the law, they should not be held fully criminally liable for doing so, as their mental dysfunction functions were diminished or impaired.
So, okay.
Now, God, there's a lot of things here, isn't there? So, first of all, you have an argument, okay, that results in alleged argument. Correct. He's only got his version of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one else's version of the story.
He then kills 2 people. And you know, when you hear these words, sort of frenzied attack, because 1 person versus 2 people is, you have to act quickly, because 1 person can try, both people can overpower you. And while you're trying to kill 1 person, the other person could be trying to prevent you. So you have to act quickly.
You talk
and
as if from experience,
you
man.
know, sorry,
You talk as if
sounds
from
like
experience.
experience.
You got to
But
kill
also
one
they
fast.
talk
No
about,
one's going to come right at you.
but also they talk about overkill, right? So, you know, how many stab wounds and hammer hits past the point of death is he continuing to do? Because 30 for one and 20 for the other,
Definitely not needed.
they're
That's
both
50.
probably dead after a couple.
Yeah, I know.
You keep going. So there's rage in there, there's anger.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Now, this is the interesting thing. He's got life imprisonment. He's 18, right? If he was 17 or 16, that might have had a different outcome.
It would have, yeah.
But also, if in law he is 18 and therefore considered an adult, our whole podcast is trying to tell people that you are an adolescent until you're 25. Okay, so although he's considered an adult, he's still an adolescent. And therefore, that doesn't mean that he's excusing his actions, but what it means is that does the age of 18 immediately make you a more sensible person, a person that's able to be accountable for their actions, blah, 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 question. But also, the diagnosis makes me wonder, because if they were older, would they have been diagnosed as being a psychopath? And they've been diagnosed with narcissism because somehow we cannot, the diminished responsibility, we find it so difficult to acknowledge that a child or a young person is capable of doing something so horrific. And not just the frenzied attack that is an overkill, but also then everything else that happened after that, which is they then decide to go. So there's no remorse. This is
That's
the
what
thing.
I'm talking
This
about.
is
That's the lack of empathy, isn't it? That's the psychopath bit of it. There's absolutely
That's the
zero
psychopathic bit.
remorse. There's -1 remorse, isn't there? Like he literally uses their freaking credit card and like puts credit cards and loans in their name just to like have a spending spree. It's almost like he knew he was going to get caught. And also the fact that he just left the bodies like in the house and didn't do anything about it for 6 weeks. Like
he didn't even try and bury them in the garden.
Yeah,
he just left them.
Like that's also just the narcissistic thing, I guess, is maybe that he said they're not going to fucking find him or something. I don't really know, but also the spending spree thing also hints at like this is my last thing before I get caught kind of thing. Like, oh well, I've done this now, so I might as well go and spend it all like 30 grand with my girlfriend or something. Do you know what I mean? So that's just so weird.
Yeah. But there's a kind of I've just got this image of. Because a dead body over 6 weeks is going to be decomposing. There's going to have been horrific smells.
Oh yeah.
The big question that I had, the big question, first thing that comes into my head. So imagine it's us, right? Us three.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm assuming here he's not got any siblings with us. Just the three of them. You've gone on this frenzy attack. You've murdered us, right? No one's missed them. Right? We'd be missed.
That's why they said after suspicion from neighbours, because they hadn't seen them leave the house in 6 weeks and all that kind of stuff. In the picture, they look like an elderly. Oh, hang on, I'll get it back up. And they look a bit like an elderly couple. They look like, I don't know if you can see it. They look like that. So they maybe look in their 50s or 60s. So like they're maybe even 70s actually. So they look quite. No, that wasn't a dig at you. You're in your early 50s, all right. But they look in their like late 60s in this picture. They look like his grandparents actually. More than his parents, which is what I was so surprised when they said parents in the article. But they might just be, quite people who stay at home, don't really have many friends. Not everyone's like you or like us,
No, agreed. Which then leads me on to the next thing. Okay, now we take a lot by what we see. First thing you've done a whole thing about visual now. Right. Mm-hmm. So you initially said, look at this geezer at the start. You sort of held it up and said, he looks.
Oh, it was a mugshot. Of course, it was quite. They all look like a wrong.
And then the second one is this couple look old because they're in their 50s.
No, I meant 60s.
They look old. They look like his grandparents, and they might be So actually, and they look like a nice couple. They've got their photograph together.
Yeah.
So we, the question is always, is a narcissist particularly born or made?
Mm.
And I would say both. There has to be a predisposition coupled with environmental elements. So we have to ask our question, not that they deserved to be killed necessarily, but because it's always a question that goes through your mind and must do we hold this 18-year-old entirely accountable for their own actions, or do we put context in it, and actually were there the parents themselves partly to blame, which may be where the diagnosis comes from, the diminished responsibility of saying that he snapped, that this might have been out of character, but actually these parents may have been quite controlling. There may have been narcissistic or psychopathy with them. There might have been a cruelness. There might have been, all kinds of things that went on in the family home as he was growing up. And this is now him totally snapping. Okay. And of course, the psychiatrist who's made this diagnosis will have done so within the backdrop of the story that they were presented with, which may or may not be true as well. But I have to ask myself, why is a couple not missed for 6 weeks? The smell that's coming out of that house, why has no one noticed that? Is it because they live in a neighborhood where no one's really keeping track of each other? Is it because they're an unpleasant couple? He's coming and going. Has he got history? It's a whole load of things. There's a couple of comments we've got as we've gone along. I just want to maybe add to the discussion before we ever talk about narcissism. So Martin McCary says, great stuff, guys. Thanks, Martin. I'm a community learning and development worker in Glasgow. Cool. Working in homelessness, addictions and youth criminal justice. Excellent. But you've got some stories, Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Good work, mate. Second one is Natalie Kerr. She says, morning, loving the discussion. Thanks, Natalie. And notice the nature-nurture debate.
Mm-hmm. It's the biggest debate when it comes to anything like this, isn't it? Is the nature nurture discussion. It's the biggest thing, isn't it? When it comes to any kind of psychopath murder stuff.
And I think that there's also a genetic element. Sometimes two people's genes that come together, not a good mix.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so let's have a little. You were saying you don't know much about narcissism.
Yeah. Well, I
prepared a little thing about narcissism.
But when I googled it, NPD doesn't the way they described what that diagnosis actually is. It just sounds like it could be anyone, like some dickhead who's a bit full of themselves. They could have NPD. It said an inflated sense of self-importance and a need for attention, and they don't really care about anyone else. That could be someone like this guy, but it also could be someone who's just a bit of a dick. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Which in the context of what we're talking about, the certain characteristics that I'm interested in, particularly with regard to adolescents, are three things. One, rage. Second, lack of empathy. And third, entitlement. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, these three things can be found in adolescents. They can actually be found anyone, as you say, any Commonwealth Garden dickhead.
Yeah,
now,
actually.
But there is also an incongruence with narcissism, which is why it's so difficult. It's difficult to diagnose. It's difficult to live with. It's difficult to work out. There's a mismatch in incongruence in how they are. So when we look at rage, right? On one hand, you have rage. Rage is a disproportionate emotion, and it's different to anger. And it makes the person dysregulated. They can't control their emotions. And this can result in a monstrous and often terrifying individual. But on the other hand, they can be hypersensitive. This hypersensitivity can mean that they overinterpret even the slightest insult or criticism. You see the difference? There's a dysregulated rage that you can see the kind of mist go down with somebody, and there's a change in them. They suddenly snap, or they suddenly change. You think, whoa, hang on a minute. But at the other time, there can be they can be really upset. They can be outraged by how they feel criticized by somebody. Then empathy. So there's a lack of empathy. Certainly with narcissism. Empathy in itself attempts to understand the emotional experience of another person, and is often accompanied by behavior like helping and hugging and soothing words that goes along with that. A person with no empathy has no interest in the issues or emotions of others, but have lots of issues of their own. So it differs from psychopathy, as a narcissist has feelings, but they are all selfish ones.
Yeah.
On one hand, you can live in a house of mirrors and never see your own reflection. I took that off someone else. I thought that was brilliant. Because the person you live with is only interested in themselves, their own feelings, and getting their own needs met. But on the other hand, they can express what's called a cognitive empathy, which is like empathy light. They can understand that you would be upset by their actions, but there's no emotional connection with it. They can even fake empathy. If they need something from you, they can use empathy or kindness as a tool. So, poor you, let's do something that I want to do because that will make you feel better. And finally, there's entitlement. They deserve special treatment. A defining characteristic is rules are for other people. And more people have an entitled focus. Possibly the spread of this pandemic has been because people think a bit narcissistic. They're kind of, do you know what? Rules don't apply to me. I can do what I like. So on one hand, you have someone who believes the world should revolve around them. And then on the other hand, you have this paranoia or extreme suspiciousness, which is linked with their hypersensitivity. So a narcissist distrusts others because they aren't trustworthy. Takes a crook to catch a crook. They're the type of people that become stalkers. So in the case of this lad who killed his parents, he had an empathic deficit, right? He almost had what they call a sort of covert narcissism, which can brew for years until the person snaps. They don't get what they want. People around them assert their own boundaries, which then causes them to snap. So it could be that the parents have said, finally, you know, no is no. This, you're not going to have this. You're not going to have that holiday abroad, that year out, that thing you want to do after you've passed your A levels. No, you have to go out and get a job or whatever. It could have been any number of things, and he's gone, no, I'm not having that.
Yeah, but
so
like
interestingly, I thought about
it. I think there has to be there has to be a difference between someone going, no, I'm not doing that you said, and then stabbing and hitting them with a hammer 50 times. Do you know what I mean? Like narcissism doesn't just equal murder. Like there has to be psychopath in there somewhere, or like something, you know, like really weird. Because there's lack of empathy, and then there's like the actual need, like the willingness to kill someone, which just has to be. Do you know what I mean? Like they can't just be a narcissist and then just be like, I'm going to kill you now because you said that. So I don't know. I find that really fascinating because there's something there that hasn't been diagnosed.
Yes, I think that you're right, and I think that because a narcissist, as I said, you know, I think narcissists and psychopaths are clever and cunning. I think you know, there's a difference between a reaction and a thought out intention, and you know, both will have a self-interest to serve. So neither will do something at their own detriment. And I think you're right. Something that I hadn't thought about was that, you know, this guy, his actions post the murder, which was seen as manslaughter, but post that is, you know, him maybe saying, well, I'm going to get caught anyway, I might as well have my year out, do what I want to do, just blow it all because I'm going to prison for the rest of my life, so I might as well make it count.
Yeah.
Which is again just says that sort of lack of empathy or that connection as to how that what he's done, or any kind of guilt, which is what, because what stops any of us murdering or doing anything is that sense of right and wrong, that guilt, that remorse, the empathy. All of these things stop us from doing outrageous
I wouldn't
things.
want that to be me.
So
what if that was my friend? That kind of
Sorry?
stuff. That I wouldn't want that to be me. I wouldn't want that to be my friend. What if that was my Whereas they just go
stab.
Doesn't matter. Don't care.
Stab.
But that line about the mirror thing, I like that. That thing about the mirror, I like that line because it made me think of. I just relate things to like the real life situation to things that I know. So apologies, you'll start to learn that as you listen more to this podcast. But I really like a show called Elementary, and so did my parents. But I like it a lot. And there's in the pilot episode where Joan Watson, they made her female on this. It's a Sherlock Holmes thing where Joan Watson comes and meets Sherlock. After he basically loses it a bit like a narcissist would, because he's all completely about himself because he's an addict as well at the time and he's recovering just out of rehab. He left rehab on the day he was going to be released because he was bored. That's the kind of narcissist he is, right? And it's made me realize that he's a total narcissist in this first series, so much the way you were talking about it there. And at one point she says, I notice that you don't keep any mirrors around here. And he goes, what's that supposed to mean? And she goes, I think it means that you know a lost case when you see one. Because he's so smart and so intelligent and can read everyone else, but when he sees a mirror, you'll see it in himself and doesn't want to think about that because it's himself. Do you know what I mean? Because himself is perfect and he solves crime to stop himself doing drugs again. It's all about him rather than, and then later on in seasons it becomes he solves crime because there's a killer out there and he needs to be stopped rather than I just do it to stop myself taking drugs or whatever. So. And Sherlock Holmes is famously a sociopath rather than a psychopath, which is very different. But I also think he's a total narcissist after you've said that as well. Even maybe not a sociopath, but in this series he's definitely a narcissist because he doesn't really hug anyone, doesn't really have any of that empathy except for Watson. Is for one person, which is Watson and himself, rather than anyone else. So I just thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah,
that line about mirrors.
Yeah, very interesting. And actually, the term narcissist comes from, I think, Greek mythology that talks about Narcissus who was staring into a pond or a river and saw a reflection of himself and fell in love with himself. That's kind of the root of where that term comes from. So. I was also thinking about another narcissist in story, Gollum.
Oh, I was going to say Trump, but yeah, Gollum could. Yeah, that could work.
Well, he's not in story; he's in reality.
When you were describing the term narcissist stuff, I was like Trump. I just it was Trump. It's also Boris Johnson, unfortunately, as well. It's mad how both countries are run by narcissistic egomaniacs.
Yes,
but
and narcissists often seek out power positions of
power.
power.
Exactly. That's made me think about that as well.
Yeah, my footnote here, or my what's the term?
Reference.
My caveat. Here is that neither Sam or I are qualified to diagnose anything.
Yeah.
We talk about, it's our opinion, which we are entitled to. So when Sam talks about maybe Trump or whoever being a narcissist or a psychopath, and I talk about narcissism and psychopathy, not doing it from a place of being a psychiatrist or being
my opinion on Trump is just my opinion. The fact that Trump's narcissist is just my opinion, totally, 100%. It's literally what it made me think of actually was this. Sorry, just before you go on about Gollum because that's interesting. Is that I watched because when I was watching the whole riots and the Washington thing, I didn't realize that Trump literally stood there in a public speech and went, "We're gonna do it. We're gonna storm the Capitol," and he was like, "I'm gonna be there with you the entire step of the way," and they all went, "Woo!" and actually believed the fucker. They actually believed him, right? And then, of course, the entire time he was nowhere to be seen. He went home and watched it on his TV. I was watching Stephen Colbert's amazing late show opening 40-minute monologue about it. It was amazing. It was just like, this guy literally incited you to do violence, said he was going to go with you. You all fucked off to the Capitol, and he watched from home while eating popcorn and put his feet up. Like, you are entertainment to him. Like, that's the definition of narcissist, is getting people to do stuff for him and then laughing at them, being like, look at you doing stuff for me. Like, what idiots follow this guy? Oh, anyway, sorry, continue. Gollum. I just thought that was the definition of a narcissist right there. Anyway, keep going. Gollum.
I know. I think you're right, and I think that it was horrifying to see. I think, as I said, this is not representative of America and American people, American values, and it's probably the most terrifying thing I've seen played out, and irresponsible behaviour of someone with so much power. Mm-hmm. And they should not have that power. And there's a thing that was on Facebook that says, Facebook don't consider that he should have the power to promote, to broadcast on Facebook or Twitter, and yet he has the launch codes. It's kind of like, this guy is dangerous.
Off social media for inciting violence, yet he's got a big red button he can push at any moment. Like, he's probably not gonna, he's not gonna, but like, we've said that he probably wasn't going to incite violence as well. Do you know what I mean? So like,
no, he won't. But I think the thing is that this represents exactly what we've been talking about the rage and the snap, because a narcissist, one thing that Donald Trump cannot cope with is failure, because it actually speaks into his whole self-esteem, his childhood, his self-image, how he perceives failure. So losing an election is something he cannot comprehend. And it has made him snap, because people have asserted a boundary on him, and he can't cope with that.
He also can't cope with anything detrimenting his image or something like that as well. Yeah, he can't deal with like not looking at it. Like, that's like I've seen in films and stuff. Again, I'm just doing it from films, but like, I can't name any, but it's like when a psychopath or narcissist or anything is like ever made fun of, or they have anything, they like kind of snap a little bit. Like in Joker, the film Joker, like when the guy he, in his mind or whatever, he goes on the Late Show, whatever, it's amazing, and in real life they take the piss out of him. And they go, look at this nut job, and he like snaps, and he goes there and like, spoiler, kills the chat show host. Like there's a video of Trump when, I think before Trump's the president, when he's running for election, and Obama's in a speech, and it was in that time where like year period where Obama didn't give a shit, and he just said whatever he wanted. Like the last year's presidency, it's just brilliant. But he's just ripping the piss out of Donald Trump. And he's like in the front row, and he's just sat there all this the entire time. Like not laughing at anything. Everyone else has pissed themselves, and like, if he was a good sport, he'd be like, I'm gonna get the election, just you wait. But he was just sat there like no, this is funny. Like, how dare you say a word against me, even as a joke? It was just like, you could see it dripping from him that he's just this. You can't say anything about him. Like, you can't have his image ruined in any way at all. Do you know what I mean? It's just textbook, isn't it?
Yep, I know. Anyway, so. Textbook. Gollum.
Yeah.
So when Gollum was not Gollum, who was he? What was his
Smeagol.
sort of hobbit name?
He was called Smeagol.
That's it.
Yeah. And then
Smeagol,
wow, that's amazing, because he killed his cousin Deagle in a moment of rage to get the ring off of him. That's awesome. I didn't even think of that until right then. Thank you. Yeah, that's really good.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. It was my precious mine, my own.
Yeah.
And actually,
it's my birthday, and I want it. That's what he says. He goes, "It's my birthday, and give it to me, my love. It's my birthday, and I want it." And he goes, "Well, I found it." Yeah. And then he makes the first move to try and like, swipe it out of his hand and stuff, and then ends up killing him, but choking him to death. So yeah. Wow. Dang.
And he helps the hobbits, but with his own self-interest.
Yeah, to try and get it himself. So. Yeah. Even though their mission is to try and destroy the one thing that he's obsessed with. But he kind of figures that he can maybe take off him by the point, which he basically does. So, yeah.
Yes. And it's the sort of two sides, the inner conflict that was going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he was done by, and it was all, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's almost like...
It's interesting.
That's schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder, whatever it is. that split thing. What's that called? Multiple personality disorder? It's got a name. It's not multiple personalities. It's something else.
Yeah. Schizophrenia. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, then there's another one that's like where they like dissociation or whatever. Is that it? Do they dissociate and have like multiple personalities? I can't remember.
No, dissociation is not necessarily where you've got multiple personalities. That's got nothing to do with it. Well, elements of it, but it's not. So it's interesting because actually, you can look at things in literal terms, or you can look at them as a metaphor. And as you've said in the past, the ring itself is not the problem. It's what it amplifies in the person. And it's the same with anything, isn't it? Power, money, position, whatever, isn't the problem. It's when it's in the hands, what it's in the hands of. And so, for example, when Frodo was carrying the ring, it was eaten away at him eventually, but it didn't change his personality in the way in the way that it, in the same with Bilbo. But Gandalf knew he could touch it.
Yeah, but my argument to that, well, it's not even if you touch it, it's if you wear it. So, like, this is literally the one, I have literally a black version of the One Ring, right? So, like, when the Hobbit, Smeagol was basically a Hobbit, right? Before he became Smeagol or Gollum, right? So, because he's the same as the Hobbits, when the Hobbits put the ring on, they go invisible because they're really good at not being seen because they're small and they can hide and stuff like that. That's supposedly why Hobbits go invisible, right? Yes, the man, Isildur, in the prologue puts it on and goes invisible, but that shouldn't have happened. That's just a movie inaccuracy. But he should have been able to have like extra power or bravery or something like that, right? Because when Sauron wears it, he wears it in the opening prologue, and you see it on his finger, but he's not invisible. He's just like blasting guys away and stuff like that, and just being really powerful because he's got the ring on. But when Gandalf gets offered it by Frodo, he never touches it. Gandalf never touches it other than when Bilbo drops it and he picks it up and he goes blah and he sees the Eye of Sauron because he immediately sees like what it is. So he never touches it or puts it on. But if he put it on, it would be like Sauron wearing it because he's basically the same level as him and he's just like insanely powerful and he could just be like. And that's why he says that. But through me, this thing could do so much damage, even though I'd want to use it for good. But it's basically part of Sauron, so he shouldn't wear it. And then the opposite to Galadriel, who's even more powerful than Gandalf. So if she took it, that's why she was like a queen, and she would be like insanely powerful. But that's why like Frodo was invisible because they put it on and they can not be seen if they wish. So it just enhances the power of those who wear it, basically, or and their skills or whatever. So.
But also, there's a predisposition that goes along with that, whether you have the power that it gives you, whether it becomes a negative or a positive.
Also, Gollum became so obsessed that because he had it for, is it 600 years? I think he had it for about 600 years, right? Which is like a really long time. Whereas Bilbo only had it for 60 years, right? And it kept him really young. He was like 111, looked about 60. So like he was, and then as soon as you see him like 2 months later in Rivendell, if he's not had the ring, he's really old again. So it's like that's because he's not got the power of the ring anymore. So the ring is corrupting him, but just he's only had it for 60 years, and Frodo only has it for about a year to 8 months to a year-ish before he destroys it. So like, but even then, as it's getting closer to Mordor and stuff, it's corrupting him even more. And then he literally is on the precipice and tells him no. He tells Sam to go home before that, and then when Sam carries him up the mountain, he turns around and says, "No, it's mine. The ring is mine. Puts it on." So it's obviously corrupting him even after only 8 months. So I don't think it was anything to do with Gollum's weakness or anything. It's just the fact that Gollum had it for like times 10 what Bilbo had it for, literally. So, and it was just like able to corrupt him for so long, and it was keeping him alive. So it's like food. Life force.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
And by the way, it is DID, dissociative identity disorder. I just googled it. That's now taken over multiple personality disorder. They now call it DID. That means that you have at least one other like characteristic or personality as well as your normal one, which is kind of what Gollum is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's come from trauma, as well as being completely broken. But before when he was Smeagol, because we always look at Gollum as being the broken part of him, but there was a brokenness before. There was a narcissistic element to Smeagol, And that's what then,
Yeah, because when he killed his cousin, the hobbits like threw him out, and they were like, "Murderer, get lost." So he had absolutely no one for 600 years other than this one ring. So that's trauma right there. Loneliness for 600 years.
Yeah, that's true. And he lost his mind.
Oh, you'd say the least.
Loneliness and isolation, and then distorted thinking, and
everything.
The right and wrong in him that was constantly battling.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end, or near the end, of our first ever episode of our mini-series, Angels and Demons. Hope that's given you all a flavour of the kind of things that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
We'll bring you extremes of people, and because human nature is a fascinating thing, and we're doing it within the context of adolescence and teenage years, just to sort of add an extra dimension to things, because I think, when you hear about children, whether they're doing something amazing or something hideous, it sits differently than when you hear about it from adults. It sits differently with us. I think there's a thing about children being powerless and innocent, but actually when they do something powerful in a positive way, and when they show they're not so innocent, these are things that we really, really struggle with. And actually, ultimately, I suspect, Martin would say the same, working in youth criminal justice, is that, and it's always a difficult thing, because if you lock away somebody of 18 for the rest of their life, who's to say what they could have done or what they could have been? And who's to say that they're not a completely different? I am a completely different person now at 51 than I was at 18.
But then there's that thing about
25.
Of course you're going to be different. But if this person was like clearly a nasty piece of work, if they've killed, for example, Brian, if he's killed his parents and then just left them there and used the money, like, he's obviously not a nice person. So like, if now he's going to be in prison for, say, 50 years, and he comes out at 68 and he's a different person, he's had that time to change in prison, behind bars where he can't hurt anyone, whereas he might have changed but also hurt other people, or not changed if he's not had to be in prison. You know what I mean? So there's that thing where, like, if you're that person, like, there's levels to it. Like, if you've made a mistake, then of course, like, you can't really lock them up for that long, I don't think. But if you've done that, you need to change, but in prison. You know what I mean? Because there's no way that guy's not going to do that again, or ever, like, there's no way he's not going to do that again, or I just think that he's no longer a narcissist. You know what I mean? So it's always going to be the same.
That's the really difficult thing. That's a really difficult thing, is being able to discern what are we looking at here. And I think in some ways that particular lad was extended a tremendous amount of flexibility in his diagnosis. Diminished responsibility is an element of, he lost his mind in that moment, and actually this is not who he is. And yet there could be another circumstance where he's labelled as evil, and that's the end of it. So,
anyway. So, like, even though he had these circumstances, he was still sentenced to basic life in prison.
Yeah. No.
I think he was.
Yeah. But manslaughter and murder, it's that whole kind of thing in America with without the possibility of parole, isn't it?
He was sentenced to the life imprisonment in 2005. So, but the thing is, I don't know what life, because sometimes doesn't life mean like the rest of your life, or it means like 25 years. Like, that's a life, apparently. I don't really know. But it says pleading guilty to the fact it was 2 charges of manslaughter rather than just like 1. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it was 1 manslaughter, you might have gotten away like a year, but 2 is often like, just worse. So, yeah.
Well, there we are.
Also, let us know what you think of this series, if you like it. If you've got any suggestions, please leave in the comments, or like message us or something if you want to. Do you like the series? Think it works? If you like us, if you want us to keep giving you character parallels and story and fiction and stuff, then we'll do that as well, because that's always interesting to look at, and gives you a different angle, I guess. We could look at angels and demons from real life, and then maybe mention like one angel or demon from fiction, or someone that goes along with what they've been diagnosed with, like Gollum or something like that, just to keep it relatable. I don't know. But yeah, hopefully it's interesting for you.
Absolutely. Lot. Please subscribe. Please keep listening. Please keep watching. And what was I going to say there? And please tell other people. Spread the word.
Share it around.
Okay. Thanks very much.
If you know someone that loves true crime,
same time next week.